Let's get scratching.
We got an explosive broadcast coming to you. Listen up. Sega games, just keep playing them. Sega!
We're back. It's the SEGAbits Swingin Report Show. Get ready for Sega interviews and news with George and Barry.
Hello and welcome to episode 84 of the SEGAbits Swingin Report Show. I'm Barry. With me is George.
Hello, everyone.
And joining us we have Ken from Sega 16. Ken, hello and welcome.
Hello. How you guys doing? How's everybody?
Good. So you are the founder, the creator of Sega 16. You wanna George has his own questions too, but I think we'd like to hear maybe how you got started in the fan community, your early days. If you just wanted to tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, it was back in about 2003. I'd done some writing for a couple of other sites, and I had done some writing freelance for a couple of magazines. But I wanted to do something concrete, something that I could control. And I was deciding between either a TurboGrafx website or Sega Genesis website, but my love of the Sega Genesis won out completely. So I had no HTML skills at all, and I just figured if I could make up for my horrible coding skills with good content, that maybe people would let that slide. And it's been building up ever since for the last 11 and a half years.
Oh, so cool. You said TurboGrafx 16?
Yeah.
You like the TurboGrafx 16?
Oh yeah, I love it. And back then there were no real websites that did what I wanted to do. But the Sega Genesis had even fewer sites. There were a couple of sites with tricks or codes, but nothing really comprehensive. So that's what really made me go in that direction.
So can you tell us about the first time you kind of played a Sega game and you decided that you really liked this company and these style of games?
Well, that goes back to, honestly, that goes back to Christmas Eve, 1986. And my dad took me on Christmas Eve to get an NES on Christmas Eve. Epic dad fail.
Yeah.
And we went to like 10 different stores. We started at Play World. Back then it was Play World, Child World, Toys R Us. We went to all those stores. We went to KB, we went to Service Merchandise, all these stores, and there were no NES consoles. People were even fighting to try and get the display unit that was behind glass. But everywhere we went, I saw Atari 2600 Juniors and some Master Systems. And we went back to the first store we went to, the Play World, and my dad said, well, you can have an Atari 2600 Junior and 10 games, since the games were really cheap, or you can have a Master System with one game. And I was looking at the two, and I had the boxes there, and I'm thinking, man, 10 games. You know, I love the Atari 2600, 10 games. But I looked at the Master System, I looked at the graphics, and it's like, wow, this is awesome. And then my brother leaned over and said, if you take the Master System, I'll buy another game. So that's where I picked the Master System and fell in love with it instantly. And I was 13 years old, and I had around 40-something games because my brother kept buying as many games as I did.
What's some of your favorite Master System games?
Well, I love Golvelius, Valley of Doom.
Oh, yeah.
I love that game. Kung Fu Kid. Wonder Boy 3, Dragon's Trap. I love that game. I also love the Zillion games. Those games, especially Part 2. Part 2 is pretty underrated, I think. Triformation.
Yep. Part 2 almost reminds me of like a modern Endless Runner, the way it plays, actually.
Yeah. That game, I mean, I can understand that people might have been turned off a bit because it was so different from the first, but that doesn't make it a bad game.
Oh, absolutely.
And how did you get a Sega? Because, I mean, your site is focused on the 16-bit era of Sega. When did you get a Sega Genesis? Was it called a Sega Genesis? Some people have the Mega Drive.
Yeah, no. I lived in the States, so I got it. Well, actually, I was in Puerto Rico at the time, which is still U.S. territory, so it was Sega Genesis. And I wanted to get a TurboGrafx 16. and it was around June of 1990, and my birthday is in August, so I'm at my friend's house, and he's a real, I mean, we were Master System fans, and he got a Genesis at launch, and he's trying to convince me to get a Genesis. And he puts in Altered Beast, and he puts in Alex Kidd, and he puts in Golden Axe, and I'm like, man, these games are awesome. Then he put in Rambo 3, and I saw the first boss battle, and I saw that behind the back view, and that just blew me away. And I was like, oh, that's it, I'm getting a Sega Genesis. And I ended up,
No, I was gonna say, did you regret it?
No, never, not at all. We had an agreement, since we were all really poor high school kids. Our agreement was that none of us would buy the same game twice. If I bought a game, like if I bought Revenge of Shinobi, no one else in our group bought Revenge of Shinobi, and that way we'd each buy different games and we could lend them out to each other, and we'd all get to play all the games. But since I was the only schlub who didn't have a Genesis, the only game that was left that no one had bought was World Championship Soccer. So I took one for the team and I bought that one, but I ended up playing it all the way through, the entire tournament, all the way through. I had that Altered Beast, and my friend who introduced me to Rambo 3, his brother gave me money to buy him a game, and so I did it under the condition that I could open it and play it. And I got him Super Hang-On. So I spent that my entire birthday. My dad went to work, and he said, "There's food in the fridge, and you got your Sega Genesis. You're good." And I just woke up like at 7 o'clock in the morning, and he came home at 6 o'clock at night, and I was still playing. I just played all day.
So on the Genesis, what was your favorite games on there?
Well, my favorite Genesis game of all time is Castle of Illusion, hands down.
Did you play the remake?
Yeah.
So what do you think about that one?
I think they did as good a job as you can expect nowadays. It isn't a question of the technology being there. It's the same thing that happened, I think, with Rocket Knight. It's not that there's not enough technology. It's how much of a budget these teams get, and they do the best they can with the budget they have. I think that there could have been graphical improvements to Castle of Illusion and Rocket Knight, but they didn't have the budget. So, I mean, in contrast, I look at what M2 is doing with the Sega 3D Classics, and it's true that they're not creating games from the ground up, but like they're just going all out with the options and settings and everything. That you can tell that they kind of have more of a free hand to make the experience as great as possible. And I had that feeling with Castle of Illusion with the remake that they would have done so much more if they had probably had a bigger budget. But it was a I mean, for what it is, it's a really, really good game. But that's my favorite, hands down, my favorite Genesis game. But there are just so many. I mean, Shining in the Darkness, I love. Revenge of Shinobi, Starflight. God, I love Starflight. I could play that game. And now that I have an EverDrive and I don't have to worry about my save getting wiped, play that one. Same thing with Landstalker and the Wonder Boy games. I mean, there's nothing better with an EverDrive now of not having to get killed by a boss and start all the way back at town.
Ken, I'm curious, what is your least favorite Sega game, Genesis game?
My least favorite Sega Genesis game?
Wow. You can't choose. You can't choose. It's like choosing your own kid,
Yeah, which one of your children do you love the least?
Yeah.
Oh, gee. I'm looking around on the shelf here. I honestly can't think of a game that I openly hate, like that I would never own under any circumstances. I mean, I can think of a couple of games that I would maybe play once or twice and never play again. But I'd have to say that the game that unfortunately has the roughest memory, the worst memory in my mind is NFL '94 starring Joe Montana. And that was not necessarily because of the game, that was because of the experience that went with it the first time I played it. And a friend of mine had it, and he wanted to trade me the game for another game. So I said, let's go to my house and try it out. And we went home, went to my house, and we popped it in, and I started playing it. And those Joe Montana games have kind of a high learning curve if you've never played them before. And I was just getting my ass handed to me left and right, and I got so mad that I shut off the Genesis, ripped out the cartridge, and slammed it against the ground, and it shattered into 1,000 pieces. And my friend was just, he had this completely horrified look, like, what the hell, man? That's my game, I ended up having to give him the game he wanted, and I got nothing in return except for the satisfaction of sweeping up Joe Montana. But I guess that's the game that I have the worst memory of. But I can't think of a game that I hate.
Okay, I was just curious.
So now that we're talking, let's talk about the book you announced. How long have you been kicking this idea of doing a SEGA of America, I guess, history book?
Whoa, I've probably been contemplating writing this book for about 4 or 5 years.
And
But-
when made you finally go and start writing it?
Well, I've been writing for Sega 16, basically doing that kind of research for Sega 16 for 11 and a half years. But at the time, it'd been about 10 years. I decided that it was time to at least look into how to get the book done. But the way the book came about was actually just pure chance. I was at every year I go to my brother's house in Atlanta. We go to Dragon Con together, and the publisher McFarlane has a booth there. And on the last day of the convention, we were going to go to the vendor's mart because my brother hadn't gone yet, and I wanted to go to the second floor because the first floor is all cosplay accessories, and the McFarlane booth was on the first floor. My brother insisted; he kept insisting he wanted to go to the first floor. So I relented and said, "Okay, fine, let's go." And we go to the booth. And we're looking around and we're talking to the representative, and the representative asks, if we have any type of books that we would like to see published. And I just pitched an idea. I would like to see more books on the history of video game companies. And she says, "Do you have anyone in particular?" I said, "Well, I have a website where I write about SEGA of America," and I explained the website to her. And she handed me a proposal submission form. I said, "Fill this out, and I'll pass it on to the editor. We have one who's a gamer, and maybe she'll like it." So I filled out the proposal form, which is like a 1-2 paragraph summary of what my idea about the book would be. And about 2 weeks later, I got an email from the editor that they liked it. They wanted a sample chapter and an outline, and I submitted that. And by then, I had written that first chapter, so I figured whether they want it or not, I'm going to write the book. I'll self-publish if I have to. But they accepted it, so.
That's good. And now you're calling the book "Achieving the Next Level: The History of American SEGA Games." And
the title's changed actually.
What's the title?
It's called "Playing at the Next Level: A History of American SEGA Games."
That's pretty good. So how long did it take you to try to come up with these titles? Because I go crazy when I try to come up with titles for anything. I contemplated so long, so I just want to know how long it took you to come up with a name for the book.
Oh, I think I was probably about halfway through the book when I finally came up with. I just saved it as at first I had it as a sample chapter, and then when I was on chapter 8, I was like, well, maybe I should change the document title. And I'm thinking, what do I call it? And I thought of Achieving the Next Level. Welcome to the Next Level, the SEGA marketing slogan. I was like, well, this is the story of how SEGA of America's game development division was created, so I'll just call it Achieving the Next Level. But the publisher decided that sounds a little bit too much like a career self-help book, so they went with Playing. But at least the next level part is there.
Yeah, that's true. I was gonna say, you said you guys interviewed over 50 game developers from SEGA, ranging from the 80s to the early 2000s. That's kind of like a. Go on. Sorry.
Uh-huh.
I was gonna say that's kind of like a long span. That's kind of like a long span of time, So, which developers is the book gonna focus more on?
Well, I ended up interviewing about 100 people overall, and most of those are game developers. Going all the way back from Monopoly on the Master System to Geist Force on the Dreamcast, which was never officially released.
Yeah.
And but I would say that there isn't one particular developer, one particular studio that I focused on. I tried to pick games that were the most influential in SEGA's business, or the most successful, or the most popular. And so sometimes there are studios that overlap, but there wasn't really a focus on a particular studio. It turns out there are people like, for example, Ed Annunziata appears a lot more in the book than I had anticipated, but it's just that he was involved with so many games.
Yeah.
So, but what I'm happy with the way the book turned out is that there isn't there isn't anyone who's particularly the star. It's like there are people in the development division at Sega at the corporate level, at the producer level, and then the developers themselves, the designers, the programmers, the artists, and they have a chance to shine individually. I like the fact that there isn't, that I got to discuss as broad a group of people as possible.
So you said that the book was going to contain about 500 pages in the end, right? Like, or you're aiming for?
I think the industry standard is about 250 words per page, and if it keeps to that rule, it's going to be about 560 pages.
Okay, and what type of book is it going to be? Like the layout is it going to be like a coffee table book, because we had that with kind of like the Mega Drive collective works, or is it going to be more of a chapter like with essays, with interviews? Or like, how are you planning on doing your book? Like,
it's going to be more of a coffee table book. Like if you've read The Ultimate History of Video Games,
yeah,
by Stephen Ken, it's in more or less that form.
Okay. You said that you also talked to every single American president of Sega from the building to the end of the Dreamcast.
Yeah, from Bruce Lowry to Peter Moore.
Wow. So who is the most interesting one to interview? And how do you conduct the interviews, actually? I'm actually curious about that.
Well, the interesting is every single president that I interviewed, those interviews were done by phone.
Okay.
I'd spoken to Tom Kalinske a couple of times before. He's always really friendly and really helpful. And Michael Katz as well. Michael Katz is always willing to help out on any article or anything that I ask him any questions for. But I had never spoken to Bruce Lowry before, and I actually got in touch with him through someone else. And I'd never spoken to Bernie Stolar. I never even thought that I would be able to speak to Bernie Stolar because I'd heard that that he's not the most open to like fan site interviews and things like that. So I thought that was a pipe dream. And Peter Moore actually came about through somebody else as well. And but Peter Moore, I would have to say, surprised me because I thought, that the other guys, most of them are out of the video game business already. Lowry's out, Katz is out, Kalinski's out. Stolar's not as in as he once was, but Peter Moore is still there. He's still in EA. So, but we did the interview over Skype, and he was extremely friendly, answered my emails very, very quickly. I mean, just a great guy.
Yeah. I've been hearing that he still gets stuff about his venture at Sega. Now he's at EA. So why did you focus on Sega of America instead of like maybe something like Sega Japan in-house developers?
Well, I would absolutely love to make this like a trilogy of books and have Sega of America, Sega Europe, and Sega of Japan. The problem with Sega of Japan, and this is the discussion that goes on. I mean, if you look at I'm sure at Sega forums across the internet, there's this discussion, and it's not that I only want to focus on the American. The thing is that I can go and I can Google a guy's name from Sega of America and I can email him, and he'll like, sure, okay, send me your questions. Yeah. But it's very, very difficult to get a hold of people from Sega Japan who actually want to talk. I mean, if you recall the experiences that Blake Harris had, he got to speak to Hayao Nakayama, but it was under the condition that it was all off the record. That's okay. You get to say you spoke to Hayao Nakayama, which is a wonderful thing for a Sega fan, but you can't use any of it officially. So it's not a thing of them, like I personally don't believe that there's this massive conspiracy from former Sega of America personnel to make Japan look bad 20 years after the fact. And I don't really think that there's this, the secret society of Japanese Sega alumni that have all taken blood oaths never to speak a word of their time at the company.
Yeah,
But
sure.
I just
Tell
think
that to half our forum members.
yeah, no, on Sega 16 we have the same thing.
Oh yeah,
I think it's a difference in corporate culture, and culture overall, that you just don't speak ill or you don't just air laundry of a former employer in public. And where in the United States, once you quit a job, you can say whatever you want and you're not beholden to that guy anymore. So I think that's just it's differences.
Ken, I was curious. When we spoke with Blake J. Harris, and also even when we were talking with Tom Kalinske, I had this sort of vibe that maybe about 5 years ago, a lot of these kind of veterans of the video game industry felt like what they did wasn't of, I guess, historic importance to the point where it's like, why are you writing a book about this? Why are you interviewing me about this? Did you get that vibe from a lot of these developers and I guess staff, or do you feel like they're kind of the industry and especially veterans of the industry are kind of coming around to the fact that people are interested about the history of video games?
I did get a few people who were absolutely amazed that I was even interested in talking to them about this. I had a couple of people flat out decline because they told me that to them it was just another job and they didn't see any relevance to it. But the overwhelming majority of people I spoke to were just supportive, completely supportive. They were amazed. They were enthusiastic. They were flattered. I'm like, somebody comes up out of the blue and says, "Hey, I'm writing a book about stuff you did 20 years ago. You want to talk about it?" You know, they're very, very, very cooperative. That was the overwhelming majority of my experience.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting because I'm a big fan of like classic films from the 20s and 30s, and when I read about the histories of those, it feels like when you're in the 40s and 50s, people started to just like we're doing now with video games, they were approaching these people, and there was either this attitude of why are we even talking about my film career, or it was like, wow, you want to talk about it? Yeah, sure, let me open up. Did you ever have any opportunities to dig around in any sort of or work with any I guess old print materials or files or anything like that, any archives?
Oh yeah, I got to see design documents. I got to see schematics, design maps, um, and a lot of images. The book has quite a few images that haven't been published before. I wasn't able to get as many images as I would have liked because I guess developers back then were too busy trying to meet their milestones and deadlines than to take pictures, just in case some nerd 20 years down the road wants to document it.
Yeah.
But I did get to see design documents and maps and concept presentations for things that haven't been shown before. That's the thing that made me most happy about the book is that there is a lot of stuff there that has never been discussed before. A lot of stuff that has been basically repeated over and over again on the internet, as this happened this way or this person made this game, and it turns out that that's completely false. So being able to get to the bottom of those types of mysteries really, really made me happy that I was able to get the full story in a lot of these games. And it wasn't because they were hidden and they were trying to keep them from going public. It's just that nobody asked the right people or nobody asked at all. Right. I remember when I first interviewed Tom Kalinske in 2006, the first question I asked him was, how come he hadn't done any interviews about his time at Sega before then? And his answer was, nobody asked me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of, and I mean you don't need to tell us what it is, but is there any sort of like information you found that you're just dying to get out to the public now with the book? Is there some sort of big reveal historically that you're staying quiet on, but you're very excited to include in the book?
Oh yes, several. If I think about it, I start to get trembly because there's just so much stuff there that I would just love to be out so people can start talking about it already. And I can give you an example, like the complete story of what happened between Sega and Tonka.
Okay, that's like not really knowing. I mean,
yeah.
Well, I can tell you that just about most of the information you've seen out there about what happened between the two companies is completely wrong.
Interesting.
He's hyping the book. I
And
think Barry now wants to read it. I was going to say,
yeah.
Is there anybody that you wanted to interview really badly and you couldn't get an interview for some reason?
Oh yeah, there were a bunch of people. Ed Annunziata specifically was someone that I wanted to interview, but he was kind of swamped. So he gave me his blessing, and spoke to a lot of people who were close to him, but I wasn't able actually to speak to him. And I would say, who else? At SEGA of America, well, I got to speak to just about everybody that I needed to speak to at SEGA of America. But the founder of NovaTrade, of Appaloosa Interactive,
Yeah.
I was never able to get in contact with him. That's the one. I was able to find the information I needed from other sources, but I wanted to speak, like, for every developer, I tried to speak to the person who founded the company, and I was never able to speak to him. I think Stephen Friedman is his name. I was never able to speak to him. So those are the two that stand out to me the most. But I spoke to except for those two cases, I spoke to the producers or the founders of the company for just about every other developer. And the book covers around 40 games in total.
It's a lot of covering for 500 pages. I was going to say, are you going to have the interview set up like as a question interview, or is it going to be part of a narrative in the story, I guess, or while you're explaining it?
It's going to be a narrative. If you've read any of the behind the design or the developer den articles that I've done on Sega 16,
Yeah,
it's exactly that format.
Okay. And you're not going to be using any old articles from the site on the book?
Well, actually, there are about 5 articles from Sega 16 that I used, but that have been just so expanded and revised that the articles on the site are practically obsolete now, but I can't change them until the book's out.
Okay.
The Sega Technical Institute, that article is about 4 times the length that it was then. I spoke to everyone I spoke to back then. Roger Hector, Mark Cerny, a whole bunch of people, and about a half dozen more people. The Joe Montana article, the Behind Design Joe Montana, that article has been expanded incredibly and revised. The article on the Sega Channel, instead of just being a kind of like a look back on the Sega Channel, it was turned into the complete history of how the Sega Channel was formed and all the way through when it was discontinued. So, and the Sega Sports article I wrote, that was actually broken up and served as the basis for 6 separate chapters. So there's a lot of new information there, but I can't update those chapters until the book comes out.
And my other question was, like, usually when people do a Sega retrospect, I guess, or a book, like a history book, they usually always skip the Sega Saturn. Is there going to be some lengthy reading on the Sega Saturn, or is that going to be kind of glossed over?
No, the Sega Saturn is in there. But remember that the book covers, and the thing is, the book isn't even specifically a Sega of America book. There's very little actually that overlaps, for example, like with, say, Console Wars, because I think Blake did such a good job of covering the management, the corporate side of that. The book focuses on product development, the actual creation of in-house games by studios at Sega and third-party studios contracted by Sega for games that Sega published. And the Saturn is there because there were quite a few games. For example, Mr. Bones and Bug are both covered completely in depth in the book.
Okay,
Nice.
and
Oh, sorry, George. I just wanted to ask.
Go ahead.
Since we're on that subject, does the Sega Pico get any play? And I asked that not like jokingly, but I actually really like the Sega Pico.
No, the Sega Pico is in there because that was not it's a Sega product, but it wasn't like a game console in the sense of the Genesis, the Saturn, and the Master System and the Dreamcast. It wasn't
Okay.
like so. I wanted to include that. I also didn't get to include specifically The Game Gear is mentioned, but the Game Gear isn't covered in depth because most of the games that the Game Gear had was either that were published by Sega were done in Japan or were ports of Genesis games. There weren't any standout games that were developed in-house exclusively by Sega for the Game Gear that I could include. But I've already been thinking about how to get the Game Gear in there, either in an expanded version or for a deep article for Sega 16, because I love the Game Gear, and it really kind of bothered me that I wasn't able to include it.
Interesting.
I was going to say the book is going to be available digital, right, and physically.
Yeah, you'll be able to get it Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, physically and digital. It should be
And
digital. I don't see
yeah.
any reason why they wouldn't have an ebook version of it.
And are you thinking of doing like, I don't know, maybe a hardcover version, or is it going to be soft cover, or is there any talks about the formats you're going to release it in?
That hasn't been finalized yet, but from the talks I've had with the publisher, it should be soft cover.
Okay, because I know that like some of these, most of these books usually like they do a limited edition hardcover, and then they have the soft cover, and then they have all these versions. I was just wondering.
No, I think they'll just be a standard soft cover version.
And you talked to all these developers. Which developer that you talked to would probably like from America was like made some of your favorite games, and it was more of a kind of a special to you to kind of uncover all that stuff?
Well, let me see. I have to say it was the Sega Technical Institute. I got to really explore Kid Chameleon. I got Comic Zone, Sonic Spinball, and a couple of other games, and it was really nice to be able to go and talk, with people I didn't get to talk to previously, and to go and talk again with others about those games, because that was my first experience. Probably not. That was my first conscious experience with American Sega games. I mean, we unknowingly played American Sega games before that. We didn't know who made them. We didn't know if the company was American, Japanese. We either didn't know or we just weren't paying attention. But that was the first time that I was actually took an interest in, like, wow, this is an American studio. I want to know more about these people, and to be able to go back and explore that in more depth was really, really nice.
And one of my favorite interviews you had, I forgot who it was with, but you did a Comic Zone one where it revealed new info. Is Comic Zone also in Vector Man, those kind of games, also part of the book?
Oh yeah. Oh, that was with Peter Murajovic.
Yeah. You showed the Sega Saturn canceled game. I mean, I wanted to know more about that. I was all obsessed with Comic Zone.
Yeah, well, Comic Zone is in the book. The Ooze is also in the book from the Technical Institute. Vector Man, that is a whole chapter on Blue Sky, and Vector Man's in there. What else is there from Blue Sky? Oh, Jurassic Park. That's been expanded and revised greatly. Both the Genesis and the Sega CD version of Jurassic Park are in there. World Series Baseball. There's because I tried basically the book is broken down by developer. Each developer is a chapter.
Okay, so they all get their own spotlight.
Yeah.
Very good.
And it's chronologically. The thing is that the chronology is kind of loose because many of these studios were operating simultaneously. So basically, I tried to include which one in the order in which they were founded. So that's why you'll have the book starts in 1986 and goes chronologically all the way to 2001.
Okay. And one more question. Well, my last question. Barry might have more. When are you thinking of putting the book on sale? I mean, is it just ballpark estimate? I know you don't have the 100% date. And how much are you thinking it's going to cost?
Well, it usually takes 6 to 8 months for them to copy edit, typeset, and get everything ready. The book's already in copy editing, so I'm guessing it hasn't been finalized yet, but I'm assuming that based on the timeline they gave me, that it should be ready by August, September, perhaps. Around
Okay.
that, between July and September, I hope.
And Barry, you want to ask him anything?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to. Thanks so much for talking about your book. I wanted to talk about Sega 16
Sure.
specifically, and I'm sure George would have some questions too. So you started the site, you said 11 years ago, correct?
11 and a half years ago, yeah, in
Oh,
June
wow.
of 2004.
So what was the Sega fan site climate like at that time? Were there any, like, I guess when George was starting SEGAbits out and when I came on too, we found that there was kind of a void for the type of fan site that we wanted, and so we kind of just made it. Did you have kind of a similar experience? Or were there maybe sites that inspired you, that made you want to start writing?
Well, in terms of Genesis sites, there was the Genesis Collective, the Genesis Product, the Sega 16-bit web page. But these were, they had like codes, or they had a brief, like one paragraph synopsis of a game, and maybe a couple sentences telling you if they liked it or not. Nothing comprehensive. But the type of site I wanted to do, there were none for the Sega Genesis at the time that I can recall.
Hmm. I'm curious too. Your site's unique in that it has so many reviews, but I feel like a lot of these reviews, are these user submitted for the most part?
Well, there's staff, there's contributing writers. There are people who aren't really staff, but they contribute on a semi-regular basis. And we've always accepted reader submissions since we first started.
Interesting, yeah. Because I recall whenever I would go out and like retro game shop, a lot of the times there were so many obscure games I'd find on the shelf. I'd look online, no one has reviews except for maybe your site. So it was very helpful. And then other times I'd find that someone would give a really bad review to a game. I'd put it back on the shelf. Years later, I'd look at it and I'm like, this game's actually really good. It's a shame that it got such a poor review on Sega 16.
Well, one thing I would like to do with the reviews is I would like to eliminate the review scores completely. And the only reason I haven't done that is because I think of going back and eliminating the reviews for about 950 games. And I'm like, well, I don't really want to do that right now. But,
Right.
I would really prefer that that the reviews just tell the reader, is it worth checking out or not? You can decide if it's a classic, if it's mediocre, if it's just one and done. But is it worth checking out, or should you avoid it entirely? But the thing is
Right.
that we started out with the scores, and we built up such a large base. It's a problem now to go back and eliminate that. And I'd also have to go back and contact each and every contributor and ask them if they're willing to leave their review scoreless. My policy is that no matter how much I absolutely disagree with a review, and I can tell you there are some reviews that I look at the score and I'm thinking, no way should that game be that high, or no way should that game be that low. But I don't think that it's a good idea to go and swap out a review because people don't like the score.
Right.
I think that instead of spending time on the internet arguing about why the guy who wrote it is wrong, you should just go and check out the game and play it. If you don't agree with the review, that's why we have the comment section. If you don't agree with the review, look, rip the review apart. That's why I think in the review manifest it says, save your hate mail for the reviewer. If I review the game and you don't like the score, let me know in the comments. Go on the forum and rip it up. But I don't think it's a good idea to say we should go and change this review for another one because this guy's score is wrong. Because reviews are subjective.
Right.
Of course, I agree with 100%.
Right. Yeah. I mean, one thing I've found too is that, or I was wondering if you felt this way, is like when games first come out, back in the 80s, back in the 90s, they were $50, $60, $70. If someone were to tell me, hey, is Back to the Future Part 3 for the Genesis worth your money? I'd say hell no. But I mean, looking back now, you look at some of these games and you find them on a shelf, cartridge only, $5, and then I'd say, yeah, check it out if you're a Back to the Future fan. Do you feel that time and maybe even price has affected review scores, just kind of in the whole retro reviewing sort of mentality?
I think the collectability of games now has affected it. I think that there are people who will tell you that you should check out a game because the game is it's worth money, and then I have games that Somebody I'm reading on the forums and tell me, for example, Double Dragon for the Sega Genesis. Oh, that's a $60 game, and I'm like, it is? Why the hell would anyone pay $60 for that game? You know, it's everything about it. The best way to play that game on the Genesis is a hack that you can download where they slowed the game down to play, you know, that it's not on crack. But the actual Genesis cartridge, I mean, why would anyone pay that amount of money for that game? Because it's rare. You should get it because it's rare. I don't think that should be a factor in scoring a game. You know, because there are a lot of rare games that are great, and there are a lot of games that are great that are you could pick up for. The Game Gear is the perfect example. I mean, you can buy loose Game Gear games, you know, for less than the price of a Whopper combo. You know, and just because they're cheap doesn't mean they're not good. And there are a lot of games that are very expensive that are not worth that weren't worth the actual retail price when they came out, let alone what they're asking for now. So
Right.
I think the collectability has kind of infected that and tainted it a little bit. That people try to factor that into the reviews. I think that and also another thing that tends to factor into it is when people say, well, back in the day, and they review the game based on when it first came out. You can't do that now. There's no way you can review Gunstar Heroes today and convey the amazement people had when they first saw that game, because that game has technologically been surpassed already. And you can mention it, but you can't hinge your review on that, because people who have never seen the game before and grew up on PlayStation, Xbox, and Wii or the DS, they're not going to be amazed in the same way, you know. But a lot of people, even the younger people, although a lot of younger people are really getting into retro gaming, which is great. But if they're not aware of the technological limits of the console, they're not going to look at that and say, "Oh, that's amazing," for a game that's 20 years old necessarily.
So you talk to a lot of Sega fans. I mean, you have the forum that's really active. I mean, I have an account and it's already like a decade old. I joined in 2006. I was gonna say, has there ever been like a discussion on a game that's like, I guess people always say it's one of the best Sega Genesis games, and you're like, no, that's overrated.
Oh,
Like, has there been a game that's been like universally kind of like liked or has like cult status, and you think that maybe some of these people never really played the game and like they're just overrating it?
for the Sega Genesis,
Well, I
I
mean,
feel like
any
George has a
console.
game in mind.
No, I'm
I'm
just
thinking.
saying.
I can
Sorry,
think
go
of for the Sega CD. I can think of one, but one comes to mind very quickly, and that's Heel Flying Squadron.
Oh, and
Um,
you think that game's overrated, or you just think it's not as highly praised? It shouldn't be as highly praised as it is.
I think it's kind of overrated. I mean, it's not a bad game at all. It's a good game, but I don't know. I have it. I played it, and I just wasn't as I would rather play Android Assault or or even Snowfeed. I just don't see the I maybe it's because I'm not into cute 'em ups and things like that, but I just don't see the game being as great as a lot of people make it out to be. It's a good game, but as great as a lot of people say it is, I don't know. That's my personal opinion.
I think opinions sometimes on Sega games are skewed by people like the fans. Like, I don't like if I go on forums sometimes and they'll talk about like, I don't know, let's say Panzer Dragoon Saga, 30,000 copies made in the U.S. You think everybody that praises the game on comment sections really play the game, or they just tell
No.
people that it's a good game?
Well, it's
So,
like Burning Rangers is another example that's in the same boat as Panzer Dragoon Saga. It had that limited run, and a lot of people I've met so many people. I've talked with so many people who have given that game they just completely just given it a thumbs down, or just, oh no, that game looks like crap, just based on YouTube videos. And I'm
and
like, you have to play the game. Yes, it's a 3D action platformer with a single analog stick that is very difficult to get into today, perhaps. But I mean, that's a game that I think that doesn't get enough love. I think the concept is so original. Jet Grind Radio, Jet Set Radio Future. Those are games that the concept alone being so original, I think merits. You have to play it. You can't just look at a video and get the full picture. You have to actually play the game.
Yeah, I see. You're touching on something that I notice a lot now is the reliance on let's plays and playthroughs, and people almost use that as they've experienced the game. They don't say they've played it, but you see people and they say, yeah, I watched the Game Grumps. I watched the entire playthrough of the game. It was like 9 hours of video. And is this a hard thing for you to in the modern era?
My kids, they'll watch Markiplier and they'll watch Diamond Minecart, and my daughters love them, and I'm like, they're just dudes playing video games, and I'm not taking anything away from them. I mean, PewDiePie makes what, $4 million a month for playing video games. I mean, more power to him. I wish I could do that, but I'm thinking, like, you're watching him play this game. You could download and play that game. No, I like watching the video. You'd rather watch somebody play the game than play it yourself. When I was a kid, you did that when you didn't have any money at the arcade. That's when you watched other people play. Because you didn't have any money to play.
Right. I noticed it's kind of this idea of the celebrity, where it's not so much the game they're playing, but the person who's playing it. And something that I've always respected about your site is that the games and the history and the content comes first. It's not like I'm visiting Crazy Ken's Corner and I'm like, oh, look what he's up to this time. It's, I mean, to be quite honest, it wasn't until you really started talking about this book in interviews with other people and being a little more vocal about it that I became aware of who was behind Sega 16. So, not to say that like I'm out of the loop, but it's just like when I came to your site, I came to your site for the content, not because it's let's see Ken make some funny faces at Ghostbusters or something. I don't know.
No, well, see that's oh, thank you, I appreciate that. But that's basically what I'm trying to go for. As someone who teaches research for a living, and teaches language for a living, I kind of find it hard to get that, to be able to convey that in a way that people are going to react to the same way they would react to someone like, say, PewDiePie. Like, again, not to take anything away from it, it's just that they're two totally different types of content. And I've always, my whole goal behind Sega 16 was always to tell the story of the games. You don't need to have crazy designs, or you don't need to have funny jokes all the time if the content is good enough. That's, like I said, when we first started, I did the whole thing by hand in Macromedia Dreamweaver, and the design was as ghetto as you can get. It was horrible. But I was hoping that if the content was good enough, people would forgive that and stick around for the actual articles. And that's what I've always been trying to do, trying to give people, so that they can read about a game and say, oh, that's why that happened, or that's how that game was made. That's the goal. That's always been the goal.
Now, something I've noticed, too, on your site, you've recently expanded. It wasn't always Genesis, Master System, 32X CD, Game Gear. What was what brought you to wanting to cover more of this? And do you ever have plans to move beyond to Saturn and Dreamcast and Pico, even though you won't cover Pico?
Well, no. Well, we could. I don't discount, or I won't knock down the idea of maybe one day including Pico. No, I have no hate towards the Pico per se.
I'm just playing.
But well, we got to the point where the overwhelming majority of Genesis games, we had reviewed them. We've reviewed all the 32X games. We have a very solid selection of reviews for Sega CD. And most of the ones that we have left to review, I think, are mostly Japanese titles. Lots of RPGs. But in Genesis, we've covered, I'd say, about 2/3, not a little bit more than that, of the overall library. So I figured I've always wanted to cover as much Sega as possible, but I always wanted to keep the game, since what we do is something that's so specific. I didn't want to try and tackle so many consoles at one time. I figured let's do the Genesis, Sega CD, and 32X first. And once we have most of that, then we can add a little bit more. And then once we cover most of that, then we can add a little bit more. So once we added Game Gear and Master System, the 8-bit machines, and I figure that once we have most of the libraries for those games, which aren't that large at all, which is why I chose to add them first, I figured, and also because they're kind of directly tied, right? You can play Master System games on your power-based converter, and the Sega Game Gear can play Master System games, and the Game Gear came out during the Genesis era. So I figure once we have those libraries covered, then we will definitely add Saturn, and then when we go through the majority of Saturn, we'll add Dreamcast as well. And after we do that, we might even add Sega post hardware.
Oh wow, well, you have a long road ahead of you for sure.
But I remember when I started the website, a friend of mine told me that writing about the Genesis, I would run out of things to say in about 2 years.
Yeah, you called him up and tell him that you're still going.
Yeah, it took me 10 years to add. It's been about a year since we added Master System and Game Gear, but we're still talking about the Genesis. I mean, right now, I have another interview that's going to be posted in the next couple of weeks, and an article about Art and Senna and the Super Monaco GP2, and behind the design on Chakan. So I'm still writing articles about the Sega Genesis, and 11 years down the road.
So you're ever going to launch your TurboGrafx 16 website?
No, I think now you have PC Engine FX, I think is the name of the site, and you have sites that have come up in the last decade or so. You know, I think every console should have a Sega 16. Every console should have an Atari Age. You know, I mean, I'm amazed that with the rabid fan base that this, like for example, the Super Nintendo has, there is no Super Nintendo 16. You know, or I'm amazed that someone hasn't said, you know, I'm going to do that for Nintendo. I would love to see that.
Yeah,
I'm curious, what kind of underappreciated or even hated piece of hardware out there do you think you'd really love to see a site dedicated to that doesn't have one yet?
Well, I don't know. I think the Vectrix has, the ColecoVision has. What else? I'm thinking that's underappreciated. TurboGrafx has, Jaguar has Atari.
How about Philips CDI?
I don't know. Is the Philips CDI actually underappreciaed?
I don't know. I think it's appreciated just right. No appreciation. No. I was gonna say this is my last question, but what do you prefer, Sega Genesis or Mega Drive as a name?
I guess I'm kind of partial to Genesis because that's where I grew up with, but I like the Mega Drive name, and when they were talking about the Saturn and the rumors that it was going to be called the Giga Drive, I think that sounded pretty cool. I think Mega Drive, looking at it now, Mega Drive is giving that Sega with the Master System had 2 mega power and 4 mega power, and Megas were a big thing back then. I think that Mega Drive actually is a cooler sounding name.
Okay, I agree with that. I actually grew up with the Genesis too, but I like the way the Mega Drive sounds. I guess it's one of those grass is always greener on the other side things.
Yeah. I just hate nowadays every single time I type about either the Mega Drive or the Genesis, I got to write both names in a little slash. It's so annoying because I get UK fans jumping down my throat.
I mean, I had that at the beginning, but because it's like, oh, you're just you're ignoring, you know, that it was called the Mega Drive. But the thing is that I never started Sega 16 and identified it as the Genesis or covered things from an American perspective because I'm biased towards SEGA of America. It's because, I mean, I lived in the U.S. I grew up with that. I remember I got the Genesis in 1990, and I was there all the way on from that. That's what I saw. I saw it from the American perspective, and that's just, you know, the lens through which I'm looking at it. But it's not like I'm calling it the Genesis. No, Mega Drive fans. I mean, I grew up in the U.S. I'm an American. I call it a Genesis. That's just, you know.
Yeah, good point.
I was gonna say, you want to tell everybody when where to follow you for more information on the book, while it gets closer to release date.
Well, I'm posting updates on our Facebook page, Sega 16, as they come, and Twitter Sega 16 as well. If I put an update on Facebook, it'll come up on Twitter as well. I haven't written up an article or anything for the website because nothing's finalized yet. So I want to make sure that I have all the details so I can go and make a comprehensive preview to show people what to expect. But as I get updates about like the price, I estimate the book shouldn't be more than about $30 if it's soft cover, given the size. But when I have that finalized, I update that on the Facebook page. So if we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. We have a YouTube channel, but basically the YouTube channel up to now is just me posting pickups and things like that because I have a capture card and I have a great camera and the book, because I was doing the book at the same time I'm doing my doctoral dissertation. So I'm writing these two documents at the same time. And that left almost no time for me to do videos. I would love to go and do videos for the YouTube channel, but I just didn't have the time. So now that the book's out of the way, I finish up the dissertation, get that out of the way, and then I can dedicate more time to the YouTube channel. But for updates, you'll see updates as they come on the Facebook page.
And you could also check more of his stuff out at Sega I think, right? 16.com? Or is it Sega? Yeah, right?
Hyphen or dash.
Hyphen. Is that what it's called?
Or you can just Google search Sega 16.
Yeah, if you put Sega 16, it'll be the first thing that comes up. You can check out our interviews, which I think are the website's calling card. That's, I think, our strongest feature. The reviews, the articles. Check out the forums. Enjoy the forums. We have a good modding community, a homebrew community. So it's a great resource. I like to think of it as something that is beneficial for the Sega community because as a Sega fan, we know that, like they say, history is written by the victor. So it's important to make sure that Sega's role in history is accurately portrayed and documented.
Well, Ken, thank you so much for speaking with us. You're a legend in the Sega community for sure, and I was looking forward to your book before, but now I'm really looking forward to your book after hearing about what it's going to be all about.
Thank you. Buy 5 copies.
Oh, I'll buy it. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
one for the bathroom, one for the living room, one for your room.
Yeah, that's right.
Have a copy so you could debunk the Super Nintendo fanboys online.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks.
Like, I would like to see someone do a version of this book for the Super Nintendo. I think, like I said, there's just so much still in gaming that hasn't been told. I think, and it all deserves to be brought up. I appreciate you guys having me on. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming on.
And hey, once the book is nearing release, or once it releases, we'd love to have you back on, and we can just sit here with our books open and discuss some pages that we folded over, or put a little sticky note on.
Sure. Be happy to.
Well, thank you so much again, and it's Sega 16. You can search them online. You can find them on your address bar. It's very easy to use the internet these days. You'll find them. And they're on almost every major social network. So, Ken, thank you so much again, and take care.
Thank you. You too.
The SEGAbits Swingin Report Show is a production of SEGAbits. SEGAbits is a fan site that is not in any way officially affiliated with Sega. Sonic the Hedgehog and all Sega-related trademarks are copyright Sega. All other featured trademarks are the property of their respective owners. Don't forget to check out SEGAbits.com, and you can find us on all major social networks. Just search SEGAbits.
Okay,